Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on the stream tonight. We have Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you. FSM is the dog. FSM is always the dog. We have Martha, great to see you, Martha. John O'Sullivan, great to see you. Gene T, great to see you. Tiny Demolition Lover, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Glasgow Case, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Thanks for moderating once again. We have Audrey, great to see you, Audrey. We also have Eric. Great to have you on, Eric. Chatty Rat. We may see the Chatty Rat again tomorrow. Dominic Cummins is, I think, tomorrow. Yes, Wednesday. He's speaking at a committee, I think, about the pandemic, it seems, and what he knew and what he didn't know. Killer, great to have you on. Thanks for moderating as well. We have, let me see. James S., great to see you, James. Hope you're well this evening. Ministerian, great to have you on once again. Hope you're well. We have Ed Stacey, great to see you, Ed. We have Reagan Elite, great to have you on, Reagan. Hope you're well tonight. We have Derek, great to see you, Derek. Anonymous, great to have you on, Anonymous. CGM, great to see you. Crovenito, great to see you. Hope you're well. We also have Alfredo, great to see you. Ginger's Giras, great to see you. We have super chat from Valerio. Thank you so much, Valerio. Very kind of you. There are many COVID cases here in Bedford. Oh my God, I'm sorry to hear that. I did a video today. I don't know if it's probably releasing tomorrow morning about the cases in different parts of the UK at the moment. And it is extremely worrying about this new variant. So please stay safe, Valerio. I don't know if you've received the vaccine or not, but keep away from the variant if possible. Stay safe, my friend. We also have, I'll just go back up. Thanks for that super chat, Valerio. We have Politely Polemic. I love this name. Geraldine, great to see you. Hope you're well. We also we're up to 200 viewers, so I'll have to go really quickly down. We have Night Raven, great to see you, Night Raven. Hope you're well tonight. Ak is Mad, great to see you once again. Ryan, great to see you. Anonymous, great to have you on. Hope you're well. We also have Enzo the God, great to see you. Conservator, hope you're well. Jim, great to see you. Hope you're well too. We also have QA Library, great to have you on as always. We have Wee Scott's Dog, great to see you, Wee Scott's Dog, and so many more. So Matt Greek, great to see you. Hope you're well too. Hope everyone's very well tonight. Can't say hello to everyone because we're over 200 viewers. Remember to smash the like button. And Dilly Blase, great to see you. Hope you're well tonight. If you want to support the channel, you can send a super chat. I'll read it out on the stream, and you can also support the channel by becoming a Patreon, where you get instant access to Discord, where there's lots of fun and games on Discord. So Sugar Free, great to see you. Hope you're well tonight. Max, a bit late. Am I a bit late? No, I shouldn't be late. According to my timer, I arrived exactly on time. So unless you're saying you're a bit late, but double mention for the mouse. Anonymous, yes. Anyway, let's jump into what we're going to talk about tonight. So, of course, Brexit. There seems to be a bit of a backpedaling going on when it comes to Brexit. The Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers want to undo the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the European Union have responded and said, no, you cannot. We're having none of it. So it says here, this is from The Guardian. It says, UK hit back at von der Leyen over Northern Ireland Protocol. So Ursula von der Leyen was speaking at the European Commission today, where she basically said, no, you cannot undo the protocol. The protocol is here to stay. It's necessary to maintain peace in Northern Ireland, on the island of Ireland, actually. So it's staying. And remember, you signed up to it, and if there are problems, they're caused by Brexit, not the protocol. Hedgehog Legs, great to see you on the stream. Thank you so much for that super chat. For all the fantastic work you do. Very kind of you. That's greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for that. So it says, European Commission President says Brexit rather than protocol is disrupting trade across Irish Sea. Yes, and this is something I have been saying, and I'm now blue in the face because, you say it until you're blue in the face, and I've been saying it all the time. It's not the protocol, it's Brexit. I've likened it to a fire. Some people lit a fire in a building. Some of those people have ruffled hair like like Boris Johnson, for example, Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg. These are the people who set fire to the building. Brexit is the fire. It's burning through the building. The protocol is a fire extinguisher, at least for a part of the building, that part being named Northern Ireland. Is it going to stop the fire? Is it going to stop the damage of the fire? No, it's not. Is it going to stop the fire itself? No, it's not. But it's at least going to limit the spread of the fire. It's going to stop some of the fire. Not a fantastic analogy, but you get the picture. So if you have a problem with the fire extinguisher and you say you want to replace it with something, or if you want it replaced, then you need to replace it with something. What are you going to replace it with? The problem is that the unionists in Northern Ireland, the DUP in particular, and the Brexiteers haven't actually provided an alternative. Why has Ursula got her knickers on her face? I know, it's a weird looking mask. Yes, it's a strange looking mask. Audrey, great to see you on the stream. Exports from Britain to Ireland fell by just over 47% in the first quarter of the year, says Peter Perry. Yes. Now, they will probably recover somewhat, but they're not going to return to the same levels as they were before Brexit. Because of two things. Because of the bureaucracy involved, and because the Ireland and Europe and mainland Europe have strengthened their supply chains. So Irish companies are becoming more and more reliant on trade directly with the European Union and bypassing Britain altogether. So it doesn't look like it's going to actually recover to a stage before Brexit. Now, if there's a huge boom in exports, perhaps, but there will always be, it seems, until the UK perhaps rejoins the single market and the customs union, trade is going to decrease gradually or dramatically, but probably gradually over the next number of years with the UK. All sure, it's great to see you on the stream. Hope you're very well tonight. Anyway, let's continue with this. It says here, so the European Commission President says Brexit rather than protocol is disrupting trade across the Irish Sea. Downing Street has hit back at Ursula von der Leyen's disappointing lack of recognition of the anger in Northern Ireland and of the EU's duty to ease tensions after the European Commission President blamed Brexit for recent problems. Yeah, but this is the problem. Brexit was the problem. If Brexit hadn't happened, there would have been no need for the Northern Ireland Protocol. There would have been no need for these checks to take place. There would have been no need for any of this. So, Brexit is the catalyst. Brexit is the problem. Like, criticizing them for pointing out the obvious doesn't make the problem go away. Following a summit with leaders in Brussels, von der Leyen reiterated her offer to find practical solutions to issues destabilizing politics in the region, but insisted arrangements in the withdrawal agreement to avoid a border on the island of Ireland must be implemented. Look, whatever is necessary is contained within the protocol. You have to work within the protocol. There is no alternative. We heard bloody flag checker. We've heard from my good friend Jeff Taylor, who said that yes, there's an alternative to the protocol, but we've looked at this alternative, but it doesn't work. It relies on businesses carrying out their own checks. Yes, like that's going to work. Brexit has made Maximilian. What do you mean by that? Not yet. Very far away from it. Anyway, it is important to reiterate that the protocol is the only possible solution to ensure peace and stability in Northern Ireland while protecting the integrity of the European Union single market, she told reporters. If we see problems today, we should not forget that they do not come from the protocol, but they are the result of Brexit. This is the reason why the problems are there. Finally, somebody is saying it. Now, it's our common duty with the United Kingdom to do whatever we can to reduce tensions in Northern Ireland, and that is why we are exploring practical solutions to help to minimise the disruptions of the everyday life in Northern Ireland. The protocol is not perfect, but it's the only thing in town. There's nothing else. Max is a millionaire. That's news to me. I don't know where this information is coming from. Somebody hacked my account. Brexiteers still think that they can make the UK great again. They do. Brexiteers, it's not so much make the UK brilliant again, great again. They want to turn the clock back. They want to return to the 1950s. They want to return maybe even before the 1950s, the 1850s, the height of the empire, where people would, bow down to the British Empire. They ruled the roost. They ruled the waves. Britannia ruled the waves. James S., thank you so much for that super chat. Do you know if the Indian variant is more deadly? It is if you don't have the vaccine, it seems. So the vaccine protects against it. Most of the evidence seems to be the case. Now, those who haven't had the vaccine, it does seem to have a higher, and I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. Well, I've heard somewhere that it has a higher death rate than the other variants. But it is more contagious. That's the problem. So it needs to be contained where possible. It's less lethal. Okay, says Mark Franks. And FSM as the dog says no evidence yet. Where do you hope to drum up support exactly? With Starmer supporters? With Corbyns? With right wingers? I don't know. Is that a question for me, or are you talking to someone else in the chat? So under a protocol in the withdrawal agreement, Northern Ireland in effect stays in the European single market for goods, and the customs union is enforced on goods crossing the Irish Sea. But checks on goods at the ports of Belfast and Larne have sparked anger among unionists and loyalists who feel Northern Ireland is being separated from the rest of the UK. But once again, this is what you voted for. Like the unionists, in particular the DUP, and loyalists generally voted, not all of them, but generally they voted for Brexit. Now, Remainers at the time told them this would not be a good idea. And they said, no, we don't care. We want a Brexit. So, if somebody told you, don't go down that road, you're going to, have an accident, or your car is going to hit a hole on the road and it's going to get damaged. And you say, I don't care, I'm going to go down that road anyway, and then your car gets damaged. You can't turn around and blame the people who told you that there was going to be a problem because your car is broken or there's a problem with your car. And another terrible analogy. Anyway, symbolic issues such as the difficulty of buying British-grown plants and other products in shops in Northern Ireland have offered an excuse for some to engage in violent protest. I can't get my shrubbery, so I'm going to burn buses. That's the Loyalists' response to this. Last week, the chair of the Loyalist Communities Council in Northern Ireland, with links to former paramilitaries, and some of them are not so well, they are former now most of them have engaged in organised crime, warned of the risk of further violence and described tensions over Brexit as probably the most dangerous for many years. The new leader of the Democratic Unionist Party, Edwin Poots, the dinosaur man, has said that the Northern Ireland Protocol is impractical and should be dismantled. But once again, and replaced with what? Edwin, what are you going to replace it with? Tumbleweeds, crickets. That's all you hear from the DUP. We need to get rid of the protocol. End the protocol. No sea, no border in the Irish Sea. Okay, and what do we replace it with? Nothing. Now, there are some loyalists actually on Twitter who have, one guy in particular who keeps saying, we should negotiate, there should be a renegotiation. Okay, but you need to have something to negotiate. You don't go into, for example, when you want to, if you want to buy a car, you have an idea in your head what type of car you want. And then you go into a dealer and you negotiate on the price of the car. Maybe you actually walk out with a different type of car than you actually wanted when you went in, which is not a good thing, but but it does happen. But at least you have an idea of what you want. The unionists have no idea of what they want. They just said, I don't want the protocol. We should negotiate something else. But a negotiation starts off with, I was hoping somebody would notice shrubberies. A shrubbery. So you need to have something to negotiate from, a position to negotiate. Okay, we want this, and you negotiate from there. But the problem also with this idea of negotiating is it won't be the unionists that's negotiating. It won't be Northern Ireland that'll be negotiating. It would be the British government. And the British government have already negotiated. And the negotiations have led to this position, the protocol. Their entire position is built on sand. James S., thank you so much for that super chat. Brexiteer, I want to be alone. I'm lonely now. Exactly. It's like, we want to be a third country. How dare you treat us like a third country? We don't want to do trade with the European Union. And then as soon as, doing trade with Australia isn't working out well, we should do trade with the European Union. Yes, but I thought you didn't want that. The argument I've heard from Brexiteers now is, no, it was never our position to replace the lost trade with to replace trade with the European Union. I say, what? Their entire argument for, well, not the entire, one of their principal arguments for leaving the European Union was because we want to stop doing trade with the European Union. We want to do trade with other countries, and they will replace the trade lost with the European Union. Because we don't need to trade with the European Union. We're shackled to the European Union. We need to be able to trade with other countries, and we'll be able to replace that trade. And now they're saying, no, it was never our intention to replace trade lost with the European Union. It's like, once again, moving the goalposts. They say one thing in 2016, and another thing in 2017, and another thing in 2018, and another thing in 2019, and 2020, and 2021. Anyway, in response to van der Leyen's comments, the government spokesperson said the EU should not treat the regulatory border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain like any other, and insist that both sides had a responsibility to find a pragmatic solution. This is the responsibility of the UK government. It's not the responsibility of the European Union to find solutions. This border is in the UK. At the beginning, there was a requirement from the EU wanted to have EU staff, European Union staff, monitoring the border. They wanted to have an office in Belfast to make sure that the protocol was being implemented correctly. And the UK government said, no, we don't want that. So they went, okay, we'll allow you to do it. We'll offload the responsibility onto you. We were happy to be responsible for this, and you said we don't want you there. It'd be, how dare, the Europeans consider putting their staff in our country, in our state, to make sure that the checks are carried out. We're going to carry out the checks. And now you're complaining about having to carry out the checks. You're complaining about these checks being part of this requirement at all. It's like they haven't read the fine detail. Rumpelstiltskin, thank you so much for that super. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I know Rumpelstiltskin, but it's written a little bit different. Champagne corks are popping in Sinn Féin's Sinn Féin's Dublin headquarters the moment Edwin Poots got elected leader of the DUP. United Ireland, here we come. Yes. Two things I think really are speeding things up. One, of course, is Brexit, and the other is the DUP. The DUP could have chosen a more moderate figure, but they decided, no, we don't want moderate people, even though Eileen Foster is not exactly what you'd call moderate outside Northern Ireland or outside unionism. But no, they wanted a hardliner, so they got Mr. Poots, and Mr. Poots is not exactly very popular at the moment, even within unionism. So it's likely that the DUP support base will go in two directions. One is to the more moderates, which would include the UUP and maybe the Alliance Party, and the other is in the hard way, because if you want hardliners, well, you're not going to vote for the DUP. You're going to vote for the more extreme, which is the Unionist Voice or Loyalist, no, not Loyalist, Traditional Voice Party or something like that. But then you're splitting the vote. So Sinn Féin are definitely going to benefit from all of this. And there's a possibility you could have, because of Brexit, you're going to have Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland and Sinn Féin in the Republic of Ireland. I wouldn't like to be a unionist waking up, to the morning of that. And unionists have to take responsibility for this, because if Brexit hadn't happened, there wouldn't have been a protocol. There wouldn't be a split in unionism at the moment. Northern Ireland's position would still be edging towards the United Ireland, but we'd be talking about maybe 10, 15 years hence. The can would have been, the can has been brought much further, hasn't? It's no longer been kicked down the road. We're heading very close to a United Ireland. I don't know when, but it's much closer now because of Brexit, because of Boris Johnson, because of unionists, than it's ever been, and they have really sped up the transition, or at least the direction it's going. A spokesperson for Van der Leyen said, I missed that part. The protocol relies on pragmatic solution. The protocol relies on the support of all communities in Northern Ireland. So it's disappointing. No, this is the argument where they say it also needs the unionists on side. Actually, not really, because the protocol, when it's voted on again, it's voted on in the Northern Ireland Assembly. It's not support from the community. It's support within the Assembly. And there's a majority in the Assembly at the moment. If there was a vote held today, there would be support in the Assembly to maintain the protocol. It's interesting that the DUP don't actually call a vote in the Northern Ireland Assembly on the protocol, because they know they would lose. So they're trying something else. I think Sinn Féin or the Alliance Party should call their bluff and say, okay, this isn't going to impact the protocol because we can't. This is something that the UK government decide. But let's have a vote in the Northern Ireland Assembly on whether to keep the protocol or not. And it will probably pass, so the DUP would have to shut the hell up. Oh, look, we have a majority in the Northern Ireland Assembly that support the protocol. Now the DUP need to keep quiet and go away. And the Loyalists the same. Not sure why they're not doing that. Maybe they're afraid that it could create more problems. It could raise tensions. But, you still have the Loyalist community, still have the DUP complaining about the protocol and claiming that there is there isn't consensus in all of Northern Ireland in support of the protocol. So it's disappointing that the British government would come out and say things like, there needs to be support of all communities. There is. Just hardliners within the DUP don't count. I'm sorry. They don't have a majority. It's the same in any consensus. There'll be people on the extremes who are really supportive and people who are absolutely against. But you can't decide to end something because some people on the extremes don't like it. While the EU prioritize protection of the single market and treat the regulatory boundary as if it's like any other external EU border, our focus remains on protecting the Belfast Good Friday Agreement in all of its dimensions. And the European Union have said this. They have already said that we want to protect the Good Friday Agreement. This is what the protocol is there for in the first place, is to protect the Good Friday Agreement. The spokesperson for von der Leyen should recognise that Article 6.2 in the protocol explicitly recognises Northern Ireland's integral place in the UK's internal market and says that the EU and the UK shall use their best endeavours to facilitate the trade between Northern Ireland and other parts of the UK. But there is trade between the Northern Ireland's position as part of the UK has not been affected. There's a border, but that's on goods. It's not on people. People are free to travel, east to west, west to east. This is on goods. How is this affecting people in Northern Ireland? Like from a cultural point of view, from a political point of view. How is this affecting their identity? This is what the Unionists and the Loyalists are trying to push. Our identity is at risk here. It's not, because you can't get your shrubbery. Okay. A spokesperson added, we're committed to working constructively with them to find solutions to protect the Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions. However, for this to happen, the EU must show common sense and take a pragmatic risk-based assessment, risk approach to the challenges that remain. So you want actually the European Union to suspend checks. So you don't want to do your job, basically. The EU has a responsibility to work with us to address significant challenges that the protocol is causing for business and the significant challenges. Remember, these are things that Boris Johnson knew about or should have known about. He was warned about it. I'm pretty sure his experts told him there are going to be challenges. And what was Boris Johnson's response? It doesn't matter. We're going ahead anyway. Just last night, the US President's team spoke to Ireland's top people and said the UK do not fuck around with the Good Friday Agreement and obey the law. I send you the press release. Thank you so much for that, QA Library. I don't think that they're going to mess about with the protocol. They're going to try and push it as much as they can, but I don't see any real language coming out of London to say that they're going to dump the protocol or undermine it. I think this is a lot of saber rattling. I hope it's saber rattling, because you don't play these types of games in Northern Ireland. There's a real risk of things getting out of control, and I think we were getting very close to it a few weeks ago, where we saw loyalist paramilitaries, teenagers setting fire to cars, buses and everything. This has died down somewhat, but unfortunately, we're getting close to the marching season. On the 12th of July, there will be a huge march around Northern Ireland. I think it also takes place in Scotland for some reason. There will be huge numbers of marches, and these will be extremely controversial. A lot of them were actually cancelled last year because of COVID. Now that the restrictions have been eased, there will be probably people marching, people burning stuff, a disaster. And it's likely that there will be calls for the protocol to be suspended once again. The unionists will use it as an opportunity to attack Dublin, to attack the European Union, to attack the protocol. You know, all positive things. Pragmatic things. Orange twats. You have them in Scotland too. I've seen. Okay, let's move on. Sticking with Brexit, of course, China replaces Germany as UK's biggest import market. Wow. So trade with the EU fell 23% from 2018 as Brexit and COVID disrupt exports from Britain. China has replaced Germany as the UK's biggest single import market for the first time on record, partly fueled by demand for Chinese textiles used for face masks and PPE, official figures showed. So that should decline, I imagine. Goods imported from China to the UK increased 66% since the start of 2018 to 16.9 billion. In the first quarter of 2021, the Office of National Statistics said imports from Germany fell by a quarter over the same period to 12.5 billion. The European Union as a whole remains the largest trading partner for the UK. Even though Brexiteers don't like to hear that, and they say, no, we can replace all of this with, goods from Indonesia or Iceland. China was the first large economy to recover from the pandemic and the only big country to achieve growth in global trade last year. Imports to the UK were also lifted by heightened demand for Chinese electrical goods during the lockdown. People were buying lots of tablets and phones and stuff. Germany had previously been the UK's most dominant import market since modern records began in 1997, with the exception of 6 months at the end of 2000 and the beginning of 2001, when more was imported from the US. The ONS said imports from Germany has been in decline since April 2019, coinciding with Brexit uncertainty and previous EU export dates. The COVID-19 pandemic has also weighed on German car production and exports worldwide. UK sales dropped in January because of the closure of car showrooms during lockdown. And I think this is going to continue because of the paperwork in respect to Brexit. And at the moment, we also have to remember that while imports are flowing, in a sense, into the UK, there are no checks being carried out on goods coming into the UK from the EU. When that changes, it's going to create more disruption, and you're probably going to see another shift away from Germany to maybe China or the United States, which has all the other implications as well. So we can see a graph here how trade, so since 2019 was the national lockdown, the end of the transition period. So non-EU trade is replacing EU trade. And then we have a breakdown: China, Germany, the US, Netherlands, France. Still, the EU makes up most of it. Okay, staying with Brexit, we demand more lorry park videos. Good to see you on the stream, Verti. I hope you're well. The EU will now increase the border checks. Yes, Aaron, that's true. There'll be more border, because you can't continue down this way, not carrying out border checks. And because of the WTO, other WTO countries will say, hey, the UK is not carrying out checks. Iceland, the freezer shop. Yes, Iceland, the freezer shop. Used to have them in Ireland as well when I lived there. I don't know if it's still the case. The EU will now increase. Wow, I don't even know how close we was with Germany in trade of in terms of trade. Remember, guys, to smash the like button. Helps the channel, helps the stream. Okay, so irresponsible Australian trade deal will bring ruin for UK farmers, critics warn. So the Scottish National Party says tariff-free imports on hormone-treated beef would represent a bitter betrayal of rural communities. Another argument for independence. Tom, great to have you on. Welcome to the stream. So the UK government is facing a backlash on Saturday over its plans for a trade deal with Australia, which have led to anger from farmers and environmentalists and calls for the Scottish Secretary to resign. Farming unions said that the proposal of zero tariff and zero quota trade deal would drive farmers out of business, while Green Group said allowing Australian hormone-treated beef would breach the Conservatives' manifesto commitments. The Scottish National Party added that to the clamour for a rethink by calling on Alistair Jack, the Secretary of State for Scotland, to fight back or resign if he failed to stand up for farmers. He will do neither. He will not fight back and he will not resign. Ian Blackford, the SNP leader in Westminster, wrote to Jack saying the deal would place a time limit on the future of farming livelihoods across these islands and would also disproportionately affect Scottish farmers and crofters. So we saw that that exchange in the House of Commons with Boris Johnson. Such a trade deal would represent a bitter betrayal of rural communities, undermining and undercutting our agricultural sector, and would amount to a genuine threat to future viability, Blackford wrote. If Jack's views are ignored by the cabinet, Blackford wrote, then your only credible option is to make clear that this is a resigning matter. Opponents of Scottish independence fear that the row over farming could fuel support for a new referendum in rural areas where has been pro-union support, previously been pro-union support. Yeah, this is like the farming, so the parts around the border generally support the union, staying with the rest of the UK. And the farming industry generally supports remaining part of the UK. But if they're being thrown under a bus by the Tories, if they're seeing their livelihoods go up in smoke, and the SNP and the pro-union parties can sell them the idea, look, if we get back into the European Union, if we become independent, we're not going to be part of this trade deal. We'll be part of the European one, which will be higher standards, which will be where things like hormone injected beef will be banned. Then I think, the farmers will vote with their pockets. They will vote with their feet. They will understand this is in our interest. We don't care about Nicola Sturgeon. We don't care about independence so much. We care about our livelihoods. Many of these are generational farmers. They received their farms from their great grandfather or great grandmother. It's been passed down from one generation to the other. And I think many of them, if they have children, would like to pass it on. And and I think the SNP can speak to them and say, this is what's on the table. If you stay with the Tories, if you stay in the union, your farmer is gone. You can see it. You can try and deny it, but you know what's going to happen. Vote for independence, and we'll be able to stop that. The Tories have abandoned you. The Tories have used you and abused you. What else is there? You can try and wait for another party to get into power in Westminster, the Labour Party perhaps, but it's going to take years before they can do anything about these trade deals. And it's not even guaranteed. I think it's a very powerful message for the farmers in Scotland. James S., thank you so much for that super chat. Matt Hancock said China's masks low quality. So Matt Hancock should make the masks himself. Thanks so much for that super chat, James. How is Matt Hancock still a minister? How did Matt Hancock actually get that position? Is it like collecting coupons and you become a Secretary of State or what? Anyway, it'd be interesting to see if Michael Gove takes over from Boris Johnson. He seems to be the one in the running at the moment. I think Boris may be on the way out because he's won the war in a sense, but he can't really win the peace. And while he still maintains a huge amount of support, we've seen how that support is not as strong as we imagined, because we've seen how last year during the lockdowns Boris Johnson became extremely unpopular and support for Keir Starmer went up, and the Tories don't want that to happen. And so as soon as Boris becomes a bit of a weight on the Conservative Party, they'll get rid of him and they'll replace him with Gove. Although I don't see Gove maintaining a huge amount of support. Gove is completely different to Boris Johnson. The people who voted for Boris Johnson probably wouldn't vote for Michael Gove. He doesn't have the same, I hate to say it, charisma. Farming leaders were also taken by surprise by news that Liz Truss, the Trade Secretary, would offer her counterpart in Canberra a deal with a 15-year transition period leading to unfettered free trade without protections that farmers had asked for. There we go. Ministers are aiming to have a deal signed before the G7 in Cornwall on the 11th of June. So what's disappointing and depressing about this as well is that many farmers voted for Brexit. Many fishermen voted for Brexit. The fishing communities themselves voted for Brexit. Farmers themselves thought voting for Brexit would be better off for us, because I think a lot of it comes down to greed as well. The European Union, as I've said on numerous occasions, is not perfect, but it has measures put in place to limit the destruction, in many cases, of the land. Some of the policies are good, some of the policies are terrible, but generally, farmers do well out of the European Union. But they were convinced that if they got out, they'd be able to do whatever the hell they wanted. The fishing communities in particular were told, you can fish as much as you want. You won't have the European Union limiting how much you can catch to protect the fishing stocks. And now look at the fishing industry. Let me read some more of your comments. Gove is like a snake in the grass, waiting to ambush Bojo. Yes. They're sharpening their knives. A lot of our farmers were either large businesses or pub schoolboys generally. Not surprised vote-wise. Gove is sneaky. Patel is evil. Sunak is presently invisible. Yes. What the hell is happening with Rishi Sunak? I had actually would have put my money on Sunak becoming the next leader. It's still possible, but it's probably more and more likely to be Gove, which is a horrible thought. Gove is the difference between Boris Johnson and Michael Gove is Boris Johnson will lie, hoping that people will forget, while Michael Gove is different. Michael Gove will lie to you, but in a way he's presenting it not as a lie. So he'll say things like, I'll help you out. But then after when, I think I made this comment, this analogy before. Sorry, Islamophobe now, but thanks for that super chat, FSM as the duck. I'm going to get to that in a moment. You're an Islamophobe now, But it's Michael Gove is the type of person who would say to you, if you said to Michael Gove, look, I'm thinking of moving house. Could you give me a hand, load the van, on next Sunday, because I'm going to, move some furniture. Do you mind giving me a hand? And Michael Gove is the type of person who say, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll do that. And then when Sunday arrives and he's not there, and you call him and he goes, no, I didn't say I would help you. That's not something people do. You normally have a company. You pay a company to move your property, move your furniture. You don't rely on friends. That's not something people do. That's the type of way that's Michael Gove. He'll promise one thing, and then when it comes to actually, delivering, he'll gaslight you. I want Priti Patel as Prime Minister. Now that would be a sight to see. She probably has the, the uniform and all. Nice and black with the boots to go with it. It wouldn't surprise me if Mog was next. No, Mog is too lazy. He wouldn't like to be Prime Minister. He's too comfortable. And he'd actually have to do some work, really. I know it's a terrible idea. Imagine Boris Johnson having to work. Boris Johnson doesn't work, but there's a type of skill involved in being a Prime Minister. Maybe I'm going out on a limb here by saying this, but Mog I don't think would like to be Prime Minister. If it was like Prime Minister for a day, he'd probably go with it. Yes, he'd love to be Prime Minister for a day, but no, there's too much involved. And he'd have to open up about all his, offshore bank accounts and stuff like that as well. By staying in his current position, he's protected from a lot of that. James says, thank you so much for that super chat. Northern Ireland farmers need Ireland a lot more. And look, the people who are understanding reality at the moment in Northern Ireland are the ordinary people. Let's park politics for a moment. There are people within the unionist community, business owners, people, nationalists, Irish nationalists, those, farmers, people in the business community, ordinary people. They're understanding that, look, we have this protocol. We have to work with it. We have to make the best of a bad situation. Brexit was not something we voted for. We voted against it. We got it anyway. We also have peace. Let's try and maintain both of those things. We understand that getting rid of the protocol could undermine peace. The protocol is not great, it's not perfect, but we have to work with it. And I think something about the people of Northern Ireland is that they, especially the older generation, they understood what it was like to go through the Troubles. And when peace arrived, they wanted to hold on to that. And they were willing to make compromises. They were willing to take hard choices and to make hard choices in their lives, both politically and non-politically, and work with that because they saw there was a greater goal. The greater goal, of course, was to maintain peace in Northern Ireland. They don't want to go back to the bad old days. Mog's wife would would not want 6 kids. And a husband away 24/7 and a security detail. Yes, probably. Although Mog would probably have them in the House of Commons running around. Mog reminds me of one of those old English butlers. New money in the US require to look respectable. He's a character. He's like a caricature. I have this feeling that Jacob Rees-Mogg, when he's in the House of Commons, he speaks as he does. When he's interviewed, he speaks as he does. But when he goes home, closes the front door, closes the curtains, and then he speaks like I don't know, a miner from the north of England or something. No offense to any miners from the north of England, but he has probably that type of accent. It's all put on. He doesn't probably speak like that at all. It's fake. Just as fake as he is. Why do the working class love toffs so much, though? It's about... I think it's aspiration. people always want better than what they have, and that's understandable. But it makes sense. It would make more sense for people to be happy with what they have, like what they have. And I don't mean like if you have nothing, you should just be content with that. What I mean is that we should try to be happier with less. I really admire Eastern philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, and the idea. There was an aspect of Buddhist philosophy that I really liked, where instead of us trying to continually fill a glass that is full, we should empty the glass and only put inside what is necessary. And that's what we should, it's a good philosophy in life is, instead of trying to have the big car, the expensive watch, or the latest mobile phone, or all of these things, like designer labels, these things don't make you happy. It's simple things that make you happy. Like a picnic with your family in the park. A walk in the morning to the local coffee shop and having a coffee and just sitting down and passing the time, maybe reading the newspaper. These are small things. Beer in the glass. These are small things, but they actually make you more happy the happiness lasts longer than having the latest iPhone or the most expensive car on the street or whatever. These things don't really make you happy. You should empty the glass and only put inside things that truly make you happy, instead of trying to continually fill the glass with things that make you happy for a short period of time and not long term. Hearing someone else laugh, that's nice. Okay, that's a bad. No, that didn't work. Labour is too against Israel. Yes, I'm getting sidetracked anyway. Driving my M235 made me very happy. Okay, that's good. I can't define what makes people happy. You define what makes you happy. But I think we should try to move to a society where we're happier with things, fewer things. Not continually trying to make us happy with more and more things. Now, I need to show you a video. I'm sorry, but it's necessary to see this. I'm not going to show you the entire video. It's Nigel Farage, okay? But he was mentioning Brexit, and I just had to comment on this. So this is from Fox News in the US, and I promise it's going to be very short, and then we'll have our little comedy moment. But I had to show you this.
Labour Party set to vote in Parliament today in favour of that proposal. Joining me right now is Brexit.
So this is about, they're talking here about the tax rate for all of, so the United States, for example, want to have a fixed tax rate, corporate tax rate, a minimum tax rate. Here it is of 15%. And they invited on Nigel Farage to talk about this. Yes, we're doomed. Nigel Farage. Okay, this is an absolute disaster, but I wanted to share it with you anyway. I promise it will not be too long.
Proposal. Joining me right now is Brexit leader Nigel Farage.
Brexit leader? What the fuck? Sorry. Brexit leader Nigel Farage. Oh my god. They don't even know what the hell they're talking about. It's like, what's a Brexit? I don't know. Just Nigel Farage keeps talking about it. Okay, well, we'll call him the Brexit leader. Yeah, okay. Will he can we call you the Brexit leader? Sure, you can call me whatever the hell you want. You're paying me to come on this show.
Nigel Farage. Nigel, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for talking with us. I want to talk about Brexit, but first, let me ask you about this vote on a minimum standard for corporate taxes across the world. Do you think it gains momentum and goes through?
No, I don't for 1 minute. The British Labour Party are so far behind in the opinion polls. Socialism in England is pretty much on its back. This is a globalist proposal coming from the Biden.
Sorry, it's a global.
Socialism in England is pretty much on its back. This is a globalist proposal.
Okay, so what the hell are you talking about, a globalist proposal? And socialism is on its back. what he's doing here is he's speaking to an American audience. Muted. Okay, sorry. He's speaking to an American audience. He knows that the Fox News viewers are extremely dumb. The Fox News viewers are extremely stupid. Very low value voters, low intelligence voters, and they just know things like socialism bad, globalism bad, Brexit good, Joe Biden bad, Donald Trump good. This is how they operate. So you don't go into anything more detailed than that.
Coming from the Biden administration, and of course it's supported by the European Union and the British Labour Party, but I promise you, in terms of the United Kingdom, this is going absolutely nowhere, because the point of...
But he's not actually talking about whether it's a good or bad policy. He's just saying it's not going to win. The European Union like it, that must mean it's bad. What?
About Brexit is we voted for Brexit, so we're free to make our own tax rates and make our own laws. And given that Brexit now has 70% support...
But if the government agreed with it, once again, Nigel Farage doesn't understand democracy. If the government said, we like this, and we're going to put it through Parliament and it wins, then that would be democracy. It's irrelevant to the European Union.
In the country, the Labour Party are completely out of touch in backing Biden's proposal.
That's really great the way you laid that out, because I like to look back during the Obama years at the corporate rate in Ireland, and it was 9%, Nigel, okay? And that's why we saw so many mergers and acquisitions in the U.S. American companies, they were faced with a 35% corporate tax rate. What did they do? They acquired Irish companies. They moved their headquarters.
I wonder where Ireland is. Is it in the European Union?
To Ireland, and that was that, with a 9% corporate rate, and that's what they paid rather than 35%. But you just mentioned Brexit. Let's talk about it. 2 years ago today, you helped get the British populist vote back into gear with the resignation of Prime Minister Theresa May.
He got it back into... Obviously, these people have no understanding of UK politics.
Then delivered the Brexit deal. Where are you?
He delivered the Brexit deal. What the... Yeah, it was Nigel Farage who, stood up in the House of Commons and says, we demand a deal. It was Nigel Farage who went to Brussels and negotiated with Michel Barnier.
On that, you say that you've got 70% support. How have things changed since then?
Well, 2 years ago, things looked pretty desperate. Brexit had been 3 years since the vote. Mrs. May was our Prime Minister. She was betraying the will of the people. Brexit didn't happen, and I was able...
No, Brexit did happen, Nigel. Once again, Nigel is speaking to people who have no understanding of... This is to American audience. So he can say Brexit didn't happen. And they will go, okay, Brexit didn't happen. I don't know what Brexit is, but I believe this guy because he sounds like an expert. He knows more about Brexit than I do, so he's probably telling the truth.
Able to lead a populist fight back. We won the European elections by a massive margin. And yes, 2 years ago today, Theresa May resigned. Brexit finally got done. And now 70% of the British people support it. And
the Brexit Party had no influence on getting rid of Theresa May. That was the ERG. It was the ERG that brought down Theresa May. And the DUP. It was not the Brexit Party. Or UKIP.
My message to people in the USA, and I'm touring around the country speaking at the moment.
Damn! I forgot. I forgot my ticket. I had booked a ticket to see Nigel and I forgot all about it.
Is if you're a conservative in America feeling depressed and down, well, that's how we felt 2 years ago, but we got it back. We got Brexit done. We've given the social...
He's using... He's, how do you say, appropriating. He's appropriating Boris Johnson's phrase.
This party as well, a real hiding. So please, American conservatives, if we can bring it back from the brink, I'm certain that you can too.
Bring back what? Is it like we lost? Yeah, you lost. Trump lost, but don't worry, you can win back. Anyway, I'm not going to inflict any more Nigel Farage on you, I promise. Let's move on. So I want to show you this. So we'll take a little break, a comedy moment. I just wanted to show you this video. One moment. Okay, here we go. And then we'll be back with the serious talk in a moment.
Boris was in Gloucestershire just the other day. To help the local Tories out, he had some words to say. But he clean forgot the name of the guy who's running to be mayor. But it comes as no surprise because Boris doesn't care. Boris doesn't care, Boris doesn't care. He's no inclination to rescue the nation from chaos and despair. His mates will carve the country up to get more than their share. But as long as he's fed and there's women to bed, Boris doesn't care. He thought his grand official flat was looking rather drab. He spent 200 grand on it and now he thinks it's fab. But where the money came from he would rather not declare. Cause as long as it's paid for by somebody else, Boris doesn't care. Boris doesn't care, Boris doesn't care. He'll never behave as he owes lots of favours to dodgy billionaires. As long as he can scratch his balls on a 2 grand easy chair. And it's all off the books and he knows how it looks, but Boris doesn't care. Let the bodies pile up high in the thousands, cause only plebs concern themselves with human life. If you're looking for Boris, he's probably out carousing, or he might be in bed with somebody else's wife. Hurrah! He shambles into Parliament and leaves them all appalled. Frankly, I'm amazed he bothers turning up at all. But for 3 more years we have no means to get him out of there. So the Tories are living on Sleazy Street and Boris doesn't care. Boris doesn't care, Boris doesn't care. Now he's a boss, he don't give a toss about anyone anywhere. His life is just a stream of lies and chaos and affairs. But his job is secure, so you can be sure that Boris doesn't care. As long as there's swag and there's women to shag, Boris doesn't care.
Very good, very good. I love it. Okay, let's move on. So staying on the topic of Boris and the Tories. Well, the Tories are not very nice people, especially if you're Muslim. So there has been an independent report carried out on the Conservative Party, where they have come to the conclusion that the party is institutionally racist. Surprise! So let's see this report from Sky News.
Still think that the Conservative Party is institutionally racist despite the findings in this report, or despite the conclusion, rather, of this report?
I think the findings of this report show clearly that the Conservative Party is institutionally racist, and that's based upon the definition of what is institutional racism. The Macpherson inquiry was very clear. It defines institutional racism as, and I'll quote this, the collective failure of an organisation detected in processes, attitudes and behaviour. And each of those processes, attitudes and behaviour in this particular case and in the findings of this report are found. I mean, the report highlights that the party's processes have failed and need an overall haul from policy to...
But the problem is, the guy at the very top, is like, you could understand if there are problems within the party. It's an old party, it's creaking, it needs to be reformed in some way. There are people within the party trying to reform it. Those at the top are, trying to work through it. But that's not the case. The guy at the very top, Boris Johnson, is a racist as well. How are you going to get the party sorted if at the bottom you have racists who say, well, look at the top, and then at the top you have the racist at the top going, I don't care. Boris doesn't care. But they know that it doesn't make any difference. They actually probably benefit from having the party as racist, because it maintains their support with the ex-UKIPers or the ex-Brexit Party supporters. People who used to vote for the Brexit Party or UKIP or the BNP or whatever, those people need somewhere to go. And the Conservative Party have opened up their doors to them. So it's not politically savvy for the Conservative Party to get rid of racism within the party. It doesn't make sense for them politically. It makes more sense for them actually to go in the opposite direction, to become even more racist, because it creates a brand. We are the racist party. We're going to make racism more and more acceptable. So the knuckle draggers and the racists all around the country can go, look, I feel, I'm not embarrassed to come out and vote for a party that represents me. I don't actually have to tell people I'm actually voting Liberal Democrat or I'm voting Green. No, they actually come out and say, I'm voting for the racist party.
Strategy to implementation to data collection. There is a root and branch overhaul being done because the process has failed. From attitudes, we're hearing as part of this report that people are still giving evidence anonymously. They don't feel confident to add their name to the evidence of racism that they're giving. And those that do give evidence, complainants, are seen as troublemakers. Behaviour, the report concludes that from the top, from the Prime Minister at one level, to local associations at the bottom, there is an attitude issue and a problem and a behaviour issue in terms of Islamophobia. So on each of those counts, it satisfies the definition of institutional racism. And Beth, the way I see it, if it looks like institutional racism, feels like institutional racism, fits the definition of institutional racism, then I'm afraid it is institutional racism.
Is Boris Johnson part of the problem here?
I think Boris accepts that he is part of the problem and that...
He accepts, I'm part of the problem, yeah. I just can't help myself. That's amazing that Boris Johnson would actually come out and say, yeah, I'm part of the problem. It goes to show how much he cares. If he came out and said, look, I'm part of the problem, but I'm trying to fix it, or I was part of the problem, now I'm working hard to fix it. But he's not. How arrogant do you have to be to say, yes, I'm a racist, but I just don't care? Like, that's okay for the guy down the pub who has the the bulldog tattoo and the Union Jack hanging around his shoulders everywhere he goes. But the Prime Minister can't be saying, I'm part of the problem, but I'm not going to do anything about it.
That he got it wrong in the past. And as he says himself, that words that he used and thought he could get away with a journalist are not the words that would suit a Prime Minister.
But he can get away with them. That's the problem. I'm not a racist, but he can get away with these things. He can say whatever the hell he wants. There are no consequences. He's made of Teflon. We saw it. He has Teflon in his veins. We saw it with the bodies piling high. Many people thought that was the end of Boris Johnson. It was hardly a dent on him. This is not how Boris Johnson would be brought down. The only way, as I said before, for Boris Johnson to be brought down is people within his own party need to bring him down. Not by external groups, excuse me, the Labour Party, protests outside. That's not going to bring Boris Johnson down. It's only within his own party. His own party have to feel the heat, there has to be absolute disgust directed at the party. They feel uncomfortable, then they'll get rid of him. It doesn't mean that the party will change. That's a bigger problem here. The party will not change. They get rid of the Prime Minister and then they replace him with someone else who's maybe more palatable to the public, but the party itself will never change. James says, thank you so much for that super chat. The laws they passed, tell me more if they were racist. The laws that they've passed, like we've seen with immigration, these are all attempts to win over or keep on board the knuckle draggers, the people who are always angry. It's like some Brexiteers, they won and they can't get over it. There are racists who've never even met a foreigner. But if you were to ask them, what is your problem with foreigners? They will read off the headlines of the Daily Mail or the Sun. how they're, stealing our jobs and stealing our women and stealing our homes and jumping queues at the hospital or whatever.
And by that, what he's admitting is that his words are not prime ministerial. They are not acceptable, that they are insensitive towards Muslim communities. And I welcome the fact that there is now an acknowledgement that those words, whether they were used by Zach Goldsmith or Bob Blackman or Boris Johnson, were insensitive and unacceptable. And I think it's right that the party has apologised for those. But I also think that there is still further to go, and that even with this report, with some of its positive findings and some of its positive recommendations, still falls short. Because by concluding what is so obvious, that the party does have an institutional racism issue, by concluding that it does not...
How can you be a member of the Conservative Party and care about racism? I don't understand how anyone could be like, do you enter with the idea, I'm going to reform the party? The party is not reformable. The party will reform itself if it decides. You will not be able to influence it. But Baroness Warsu, what does she truly believe that she can redirect the party in some way? If she cares about racism, why the hell would you be in the Conservative Party? Doesn't make any sense to me. It's like I care about the rule of law. Well, I'm going to join the mafia.
It clearly shows that there are flaws in the way in which this inquiry was conducted, flaws that I've already pointed out, and it requires the Equalities and Human Rights Commission to look at that.
Just on what the Prime Minister said, though, he has apologised when we go back to calling Muslim women wearing veils bank robbers.
But he didn't apologise. He gave the typical politician apology. I'm sorry if anyone was offended. Not, I'm sorry for the words I said that are offensive. These words were deeply offensive, and I'm sorry for that, for the offence that I caused. It's another way of saying I'm sorry if you were offended, which is implying that maybe you were offended, maybe you weren't, and I'm sorry that you felt bad, not I'm sorry for what I did. There's a difference there.
Letterboxes. He has apologised for the offence he caused regarding those remarks. He hasn't actually apologised for making the remarks. And in the
good point.
report, they say, we gave him an opportunity to apologise and offered the Prime Minister an opportunity to apologise for his past remarks. He said the following, and that he did not wish to add anything further. And then he says, I apologise for I'm obviously sorry for any offence taken. That's a bit of a non-apology, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he apologises for the offence he caused, which means he accepts that the words were offensive, and he accepts that they are not.
That's a bit of a mental gymnastic you're engaging in there. Yeah, well, he apologised. An apology is an apology. Okay, whether he means it or not is another thing. But we'll take whatever we can get. like Boris Johnson obviously did not apologise, because we know what an apology sounds like. Most people know. Like, if somebody says to you, "I'm sorry if you were offended," it's like if I crashed into your car, and I said, "I'm sorry if your car was damaged." It's not I'm sorry I damaged your car. I'm sorry if your car was damaged. There's a difference there. It's sort of implying that, well, it wasn't me, it was the car. It was my car hitting your car. It wasn't me, hitting your car. I'm trying to create some distance between myself and the action. And that's what Boris Johnson has been doing. Now, for many people, it sounds like an apology. It's not a real apology. We all know what a real apology sounds like.
Words that would suit a Prime Minister.
Why is she apologising for Boris? Oh, because Boris Johnson is the boss. Now, she's a former chair. I don't know if she's still a member. Well, she's a baroness, so she's a member of the House of Lords. But you don't want to rock the boat too much. There are problems. Let's try and sort it out. But you don't want to push too hard here, so she doesn't want to come out and openly criticize Boris Johnson. She knows he's a racist. She knows that he doesn't give a crap about any of this. So it's all about working within the limits that she has. She can't rock the boat too much. This would piss off the party. These sort of, how these things generally work is, here, go and have your report, carry out your study, and then nothing will happen. And this is how it always happens. Somebody carries out a report into the party about corruption, about racism, about sexism, about whatever. There's a bit of a hullabaloo for a few days, even maybe just a few hours, and then nothing happens. And then a few years' time, you're going to hear a similar report again about anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or racism or whatever in the party, and there'll be another report. Some people will complain about it, and then nothing will happen. And this goes on and on and on until it becomes a situation that is outside the party, where there's pressure from without. If there's pressure from outside, then the party may change. But once there's requirements within the party to do something, they're not going to do anything about it. Not my opinion, presented. Nation Edgar. Okay, I know I'm mispronouncing that. I'm missing a word somewhere. Thank you so much for that £1 super chat. Very kind of you. Thank you so much for that. I love the name. More than just Boris, Cameron and the previous London mayor candidate Goldsmith, framed as a moderate like Sadiq Khan, as sharing a platform with Al-Qaeda type extremist Islamophobic tribes. Yes, this idea that, look, Sadiq Khan is a Muslim. That means he's probably part of Al-Qaeda. This is the sort of... And the Tories would use this in order to help them win elections. They paint pictures, or they'd even go to inventing fake websites for the candidate, their opposite. So if they were running against a Labour candidate, they'd actually set up a website. The Conservative Party set up a website, a fake website, where this politician would say, oh, I want to, ban flags, and I want to, I don't know, impose Sharia law on the UK or something like that. And they would promote this website, and the public would obviously go and see it, maybe like they're doing a search or research on the candidate, and say, well, look at this candidate, he's terrible, or she's horrible. I'm not going to vote for her. I'm going to vote for the more reasonable conservative candidate. Baroness Warsi is a token Islamic person. I don't know if she's a token, but because I think she's been around for a while, and I think she has represented her community in the past, but you can't change the system. The system is broken. The party is broken. You're not going to be able to rip the racism out of the Conservative Party. It will change eventually, but under its own steam. Now, staying somewhat with this topic, I just want to move on to the Labour Party. So Starmer promises Race Equality Act a year on from George Floyd's murder. So Keir Starmer has vowed to introduce a Race Equality Act to address inequalities exposed by the coronavirus pandemic on the anniversary of George Floyd's murder, as vigils are held across the UK to mourn his death. The Labour leader, in a joint video statement with the Shadow Minister, Cabinet Ministers David Lammy and Marcia de Cordova, said eradicating structural racism would be a defining cause for the next Labour government. Floyd's murder by a white police officer sparked a huge wave of anti-racism protests in the UK, with 260 towns and cities holding Black Lives Matter protests last June and July. The protests were attended by hundreds of thousands of people. Lammy, the Shadow Justice Secretary, said George Floyd looked like me. He could have been me. That's why his death reverberated across the world. People said, none of us can breathe when we still face the issues of structural racism in our lives every day. It just goes on to say, but just a bit more detail about that. No, I was hoping. No, it wasn't this article. There was another article. Anyway, no, I'll just read this other part. It says, according to a new poll, Britons remain split over the attention paid to racism over the last year. The research by Ipsos Mori gave an insight into British attitudes towards racism and inequalities 1 year after Floyd's murder, with 28% of respondents saying it had been discussed too much, while 30% said it had been spoken about too little. That's concerning. 28% think that it's been spoken too much. It's just a sizable portion of the population. We're talking too much about racism. What? When was the last time we heard anything? Now, these are maybe people who, I don't know, can we say are racist? They don't like the mirror being held up to them. James S., thank you so much for that super chat. Boris wants Muslims to feel lucky they're in the UK. This is the type of racism of low achievement, as far as I remember. It's a type of racism where they say, you should be happy that you're here. Everything is great for you. You shouldn't complain. Be happy with what you have. In the sense of, if there's a bit of racism, well, isn't it better than where you were before? This is not a humane approach to, if there are people suffering for no good reason, then you need to fight that. Our job, thank you so much for that super chat. How does race work in Europe? You have countries which have self-regulated themselves, segregated themselves through war. I'm not sure I understand the question. How you have countries which have self-segregated themselves through war. How does it? Well, racism in Europe probably is different than it is in the US, because in the United States, a lot of the racism stems from slavery. And we didn't really have that here in Europe. The slavery, we had slavery, but it was generally in our colonies. So many European countries had empires, they had colonies around the world, and the slaves were in the colonies. They generally didn't have the slaves brought back to the countries, the European countries. So I think most of the how can I say, interaction that took place with white Europeans and Africans, or generally people outside Europe, probably was during the last 60, 70 years. For example, I remember a story, this is a horrible story, but it was a true story of in Ireland in the 1960s, I think it was, 1950s, 1960s, where many children from Africa were adopted by Irish families, or fostered, I should say, by Irish families. And the way they treated them was completely insane. They didn't actually know whether they were human or not. They're like, how do we feed them? Do they live on sunlight or something like this? It was absolutely insane. So what type of racism was this? I don't know how you'd even define it. But the interactions people had 50, 60 years ago with people outside the European, or outside Europe, European Union, outside Europe, was very different to the types of racism that was experienced by African Americans in the US. I think they're not really comparable. I'm sorry, I didn't really answer your question. So this is, it's good that Keir Starmer is raising this issue. Unfortunately, because it's a Labour policy, a Labour amendment, or sorry, a bill that they'd like to put through Parliament. It's not going to win because the Conservatives have an 80-seat majority, and anything that comes in from the Labour Party generally gets rejected. So this isn't probably going anywhere. And of course, the Conservatives don't want to appear as, you know, caring about George Floyd, because that would make them look bad in front of the anti-woke people and the racists and the knuckle draggers. So they don't want to appear accommodating. So in regards to this, I just want to stay on this story and then I'll move on. Somewhat related is the National Trust chairman. This is from the Telegraph, so you know, it's more or less on the Tory side, but just I think it's interesting discussion. So it says National Trust chairman quits amid revolt over charity's woke agenda. So the chairman of the National Trust has resigned amid a growing revolt among its members over the charity's woke policies. People still don't understand the concept of woke. Tim Parker's decision to quit was announced just 24 hours after a rebel group of members set out plans to force him out at the end of this year's annual general meeting. Members, MPs and ministers have grown increasingly concerned over the Trust's leadership after it published a report last September into the links between the properties, including the home of Winston Churchill, and the UK's colonial and slavery past. Oh my goodness! How dare you? Andy, thank you so much for that super chat. Andy says, really feels like we're losing the war, Max. All I see on the other side is consolidation of their coup. I feel a bit hopeless sometimes. Scotland is the hope. Scotland at the moment is the light on the city on the hill. I see Scotland as the way out, the catalyst. So yes, it is in a very dark place at the moment. There are a number of problems that led up to this, unfortunately, and it's going to take a number of steps to get out of this. But I see now, I probably disagree with Phil from a different bias on this. I know Phil supports the union, and maybe Bowler Hat Man as well, so they may disagree with me on this, but we're friends, so I do hope they consider me a friend as well. We're on the same team. But I think Scotland leaving could be a catalyst for a real change in the rest of the UK. The Labour Party need to get on board with proportional representation. They need to form coalitions with the other parties, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats. Sometimes it's a case of holding your nose and voting for someone who you don't like because they're better or not as bad as the Tory. Now, sometimes you could have a good Tory, but the prize has to be getting rid of the Tories. So sometimes it might be a case of voting for someone who's not great to get out the Tory, to keep the Tory out. Because what needs to happen is you need a Labour Party in power. Either they're not going to win a majority, but at least a Labour Party in power who are going to go ahead with proportional representation. Proportional representation is the UK's only way out of this. Because then, once you have it, it will stop extremist populist parties like the Conservatives getting back into power. Now, they could get into power in some way, but their power would be greatly diluted because they would have to form a coalition with a more moderate party. Now, proportional representation could completely change the landscape as well, where you would have, multiple left-wing parties. You wouldn't just have the Labour Party. You would have a Socialist Party. You would have a moderate-style Labour Party. They would be competing with each other, but they would represent different views. You wouldn't just have one party representing a whole range of people's views. So I understand now is a dark period for democracy, it's a dark period for Britain, but it will end. But I think Scotland becoming independent will be a catalyst for the Labour Party, for the left-leaning party, the moderate parties in the rest of Britain to get their arse together, get their arse in gear, to get their shit together and do something about this. Because once you get proportional representation, it's not a silver bullet. You could still have a Conservative Party in power, but their power would be greatly reduced. It'd be deeply diluted. You could even have Nigel Farage in government, but that would be better than the current status, because Nigel Farage would be in power with a more moderate party. So the power Nigel Farage would have, of course, I'm just picking Nigel Farage out of the air as an example, but his power would be diluted, and it wouldn't be as extreme as what you have at the moment. So do hold some hope, hold out a little bit of hope. The highly critical rebel motion at this year's AGM, which has not yet been submitted, is understood to have been backed by more than 50 members, said the membership has no confidence in Tim Parker as chairman of the National Trust, and asked for that he offer his resignation. What's the problem with linking Winston Churchill to slavery if there is a link? Why is there a problem with providing more information? We don't want people to know the history. That's basically it. Instead, the National Trust has been the subject of debates in Parliament and investigation by the Charity Commission, which found that the charity published a report which generated strongly held and divided views without fully managing the risk to the reputation of the charity. Okay. A charity is made up of people. People have opinions. The charity will have opinions. You can try and dampen down the opinions, but it's very difficult. The Director General has admitted that the timing of the publication of the interim report on the connections between colonialism and properties now in the care of the National Trust, including links to historical slavery, was a mistake. Once again, I don't see the problem here. What is the problem with explaining history? This is not something just about aesthetics. It's about history, teaching history. The SNP has to set candidates in England. That's something that would be interesting to see, but I don't really see it happening, because you'd need a party south of the border, and there's a lot. Could be something quite difficult. But I think you could have independent, canvassing on behalf of the SNP. I don't know, you could get round the law some way, but it would be interesting to see what sort of support there would be for the SNP south of the border, just out of curiosity. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. The motion continued. The National Trust family, so the National Trust leadership has frequently been out of step with the members and supporters over recent years. Unnecessary controversies have threatened to undermine the charity's simple duty to promote public enjoyment of buildings, places and chattel under its protection. No, I think that it's about providing not just entertainment but also education. When you go to these historical buildings, you don't just look, whoa, isn't that a beautiful building? Who built it? We can't tell you. What? Is it Romanesque, or is it a different style? No, we can't tell you. Okay. How old is the building? We can't tell you. We're not allowed to answer these questions. Get out. No more questions. Is that what you want? This sort of thing has a way of backlashing, because what's going to happen is a group of Tories or Tory supporters are going to go to one of these buildings, and they're going to be generally curious, and they're going to ask questions, and they're probably going to be told, I'm sorry, we can't answer that question. We're not allowed to answer that question. And then they're going to why? because the Conservative Party don't want us answering these questions. And then maybe the younger generation would be like, okay, well, that's not very clever. Why? And then they'll discover it's part of the policy to stop talking about the past. Maybe I'm being too generous to these Tory party supporters, but like, why have people a problem with understanding history? History is extremely interesting. Understanding how people thought in the past. Doesn't mean you justify what people did in the past, or you dismiss what people did in the past. Understanding it's part of our history. It's part of how we got here. James says, thank you so much for that super chat. Scotland can break free like Ireland did. I think Scotland will become independent. There'll be a lot of roadblocks thrown in the way. But in a sense, the more the roadblocks are thrown in the way, the more the people of Scotland will be more determined to become independent. The worst thing the unionists could do would be to try and stop it. Because that will convince the Scottish people, look, they're trying to stop us. That's why we should become independent. There's a further controversy in 2017 when it emerged that the trust had been forced to tried to force volunteers at a Norfolk mansion to wear a gay pride ribbon symbol on lanyards and badges. The trust had later dropped the demand. Somehow I see it like forced. I don't think it was probably forced. It was, look, we have this symbol, would you like to wear it? Or everyone is wearing it, would you like to wear it as well? And some people, religious people, said, no, I don't want it. Now you're forcing me to wear it. Okay, we're not going to, okay, let's just drop it. Probably something like that is probably more plausible. This is very disappointing because I think the National Trust provides something beautiful. They provide something educational, and focusing just on the beauty and not the education, you lose out on a huge amount. Our history is part of us. We build. It's like layers. We're on the top layer. There'll be other layers above us. But what came before, we have to acknowledge, we have to understand it. Everything that we have around us is part of history. It came to us as a consequence of an action taken before, and a decision made, a good decision, a bad decision. Anyway, let's move on from that. We're almost at the end of the stream, actually, so I just want to cover a story that was touched on earlier when Nigel Farage, I'm not going back to Nigel Farage, I promise, but it was touched on about the tax issue. And the Irish government are not fully on board with this proposal by Joe Biden.
We absolutely want to engage with President Biden and his team, but we do have really significant reservations.
So this is the Irish government. The Ireland opposes President Biden's global tax plans. Now, it must be remembered that the Republic of Ireland has benefited greatly from two things over the last 30 years. Low corporation tax rate and European Union membership. So it wants to hold on to both of these. And they're afraid that if Joe Biden imposes, or agrees, I should say, a global tax minimum on corporations, Ireland is going to lose out. Now, Ireland will always try to present itself as, no, people come here because we're an English-speaking country, because we're on the edge of Europe, because we have a highly educated workforce, we're an open society. A lot of those things are somewhat important, yes, considerably important. But for American companies, the number one importance is the tax rate. So if that goes, open economy, friendly country, nice beer doesn't really cut it, I'm afraid.
Regarding a global minimum effective tax rate that is at such a level that it means only certain countries and certain size economies can benefit from that rate. We have a really significant concern about that.
Do you envisage in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, there'll still be an Irish 12.5% corporate tax rate?
Yes, I do. I do anticipate that there will continue to be a place for a rate such as this and for...
He can't make this promise. He can try, but he definitely can't guarantee this, because he had for two reasons: because he may not be in government in the future, but also he has no control over this. This could be something that if the European Union agree to, Ireland will have to go along with.
Low rates.
Are you proud of the 12.5% tax rate in Ireland?
I'm proud of the part that it has played in our economic development, that for a country of our scale and size, that we were able to grow our economy, that we're able to grow it over many decades. But I always make the case when debating our 12.5% rate that it is now only part of the competitive offering.
It's only part. It's only part, like 90% is only part.
An economy like Ireland's, it's part of it.
In light of the Northern Ireland Protocol and what's going on with Brexit, what's your response to, for instance, David Frost, and there are others in the UK government who are calling on the EU to reconsider this, not to take such a purist view of the paperwork and checks at the border?
When Minister Frost and his team negotiated this protocol, the protocol and the treaty was passed by the House of Commons, and the protocol was needed because of the form of Brexit that the British government wanted to implement, which we respect. That's their sovereign mandate. But in they exercising their sovereign mandate, it's equally important that our membership of the European single market, which is also an exercise of sovereignty on behalf of the Irish people, is also recognised in this debate.
Okay, well, now he's talking about Brexit, and we talked about Brexit earlier on. But I think it would be extremely damaging to the Irish economy if the corporate tax rate was increased. Ireland would no longer be competitive in this sense. The politicians will try to play down the tax rate and play up, like to the public. Officially, they will say, no, it's not because of the tax rate, it's because of our workforce or whatever. But in reality, it's the tax rate. And if this was increased, it would be, it would have an unpredictable. Now, some people say it would be disastrous for the economy. Maybe it would. But it may not. They may be able to find a way around it. But I do think it would be damaging to the Irish economy. As I said, the Irish economy benefit greatly from a different tax rate. It's not a tax haven, okay? It's not at 0% or something like that. It's lower than the rest of Europe. So it is protected in that way. But there are other parts of Europe in a similar boat. So whether Joe Biden will be able to get this agreed, I find it extreme. I think I don't like to dismiss it, but it seems to me almost pie in the sky, because it's very difficult to get countries of the world to agree on climate change, something that's, a promise to do something in the future. This would be about agreeing something from today, basically, and it would put certain countries at a disadvantage. Now, how do you get them on board? How do you convince a country to vote for something, to agree to something that would put it at a disadvantage? I think it's going to be very difficult. What sort of reforms are going to come with this as well? Growing your economy is one thing, but if it's inequality grows, what's the point? Yes, if it's inequality grows, it's we're seeing greater wealth inequality at the moment. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And it's projected to continue that way for the next number of years. Plenty of people around the world do not consider Churchill to be a hero. Stalin wasn't as bad as Churchill. Oh no, Stalin killed, was it 100 million of his own people? I was putting it out there for context. If the US want to lecture other countries on tax, they need to look at their own laws too. How come we can discuss Hitler and Stalin but not Assange? In his case, just too current. Yes, that's a real danger. I think that the US is under current management might prevent it. Foreigners can open up US LLCs at 0% tax with no CRS reporting. I don't understand what that's about. I don't understand these words, these acronyms. 6 million. No, that was Stalin, not Hitler. Anyway, we're getting a bit sidetracked. So, guys, I want to say thanks to everyone for coming on the stream tonight. Greatly appreciate all of the super chats. Greatly appreciate. Thank you so much. I want to say thanks also to the moderators who've done a great job tonight. Before we finish, we're going to have our one for the road. So I want to say thanks to Janie for her brilliant video. We're going to see that in a moment. So, guys, remember, the next stream is on a Friday night, same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 British summertime. So have a great week. But before we go, remember we have our one for the road. So I'll put that up now.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible that the BBC tell lies about Princess Diana. Because you shouldn't lie. I mean, yeah, I was a journalist and I was sacked twice for lying, but what's that badge? This is a special badge that says I'm the Prime Minister. It's my new cosplay. But you shouldn't be lying if you're a journalist, although, you know, I get sacked for doing that twice. But that's by the by.
I didn't understand the last part. But so, guys, have a great week. I'll see you all on Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 British summertime. Thanks once again to everyone who came on the stream tonight. Thanks for smashing the like button. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat. Greatly appreciated, as always. And thanks to the moderators for keeping the stream on the straight and narrow. So, guys, I was going to say something else, but I don't remember. So, yes, if you want to if you're a patron, hop on to the post-stream chat. I'll be on with everyone who wants to have a chat after the stream about everything and anything. So for those of you who I don't see you, I'll see you on Friday. So have a great week and take care. And remember, as Boris always says, stay alert. Good night, guys. See you on Friday.